Napoleon once said, "Never interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake." The strange thing is, most people don't even know who their enemies are anymore. When we hear the word enemy, we imagine some dramatic rival, someone standing opposite us openly, someone who wants to defeat us publicly, almost like old stories where two men stand across from each other holding swords. But modern enemies rarely look like that. Most enemies today look calmer, more casual, but no less dangerous. It usually isn't the person openly threatening you. Most of the time it's the person laughing with you, joking with you, quietly watching you, or subtly trying to sabotage you without ever making it obvious enough for others to notice. Sometimes they support you publicly, but privately enjoy watching you struggle. And the uncomfortable truth is that most people genuinely do have enemies around them. But modern hostility has become quiet and socially acceptable, so most never realize it until damage has already been done. We like to think confrontation solves everything, that calling someone out for what they are is the smartest move. But rarely is a modern enemy scared away because you expose them. If anything, you often give them exactly what they wanted: your attention, your emotional reaction, your acknowledgement. Suddenly they stop being a bitter observer in the background and become someone who now feels involved in your life directly. So how do you actually notice an enemy around you? Truthfully, you usually don't at first glance. Before, it was more common for conflict to be direct. People announced challenges openly because honor mattered more. But now people prefer appearing civilized, even when their intentions are ugly underneath. Enemies still exist, they just hide better now. And that's why paranoia is dangerous too. Because not everyone who jokes about you becomes your enemy. Not everyone who disagrees with you secretly hates you. In fact, one of the strangest things about modern enemies is that many don't even fully realize what they are themselves. An enemy, in simple terms, is someone who does not truly want the best outcome for you. Deep down, seeing you fail, embarrassed, weakened, or slowed down satisfies something in them emotionally. They may never admit it openly, sometimes not even to themselves, but their behavior eventually reveals it. Because actions always leak inner thoughts eventually. A jealous person struggles to hide jealousy forever. A bitter person leaks bitterness over time, and no type of enemy reveals themselves faster than a lazy one. Lazy people are dangerous and should never be underestimated. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is actively searching for enemies when life would have naturally shown them to you anyway. Some people romanticize enemies. They think opposition sharpens them and turns them stronger, and sometimes that's true. But not all enemies benefit you. Some simply drain you. That's why I always think back to what Machiavelli once said. If you see your friend with your enemy, then both are your enemy, one openly and the other secretly. Now this quote sounds paranoid at first, but the deeper meaning is actually about awareness and loyalty. Because there are really only two possibilities in this situation. The first is that your friend knows this person disrespects you, sabotages you, or secretly wants the worst for you, and they still comfortably remain around them anyway. Which means preserving comfort matters more to them than loyalty to you. The second possibility is honestly worse in a different way. It's when your friend genuinely doesn't know who your enemies are at all. Which means they don't observe your life closely enough, they don't listen carefully enough, or they simply don't understand you deeply enough to recognize what harms you. And at that point, you start asking yourself a serious question. Can someone really be called a friend if they are completely unaware of what slowly destroys you? Because friendship isn't just social warmth. Real friendship requires awareness, it requires attention. A true friend naturally becomes sensitive to what harms you because your well-being matters to them. You trust that their advice, behavior, and intentions are aligned with your best interests. And likewise, A person who consistently ignores your best interests eventually stops looking like a friend and starts looking like something else entirely. Subtle, right? But that's exactly the problem with modern enemies. Most of them are subtle. They rarely attack loudly. Most provide no obvious harm at first, just quiet damage over time. And because of that, your reaction should also remain controlled and subtle. Confrontation rarely fixes these kinds of people. Your real goal is simply to reduce the damage they can cause. Most enemies are manageable because most people still have something to lose: their reputation, their future, their image, their relationships, their social standing. Strangely enough, their self-interest protects you because they still care about appearing respectable publicly. But this is where the danger of a lazy enemy truly appears. A lazy enemy often has very little to lose. When someone has no meaningful direction, no discipline, no purpose larger than themselves, they become bored. And bored people become dangerous because destruction starts feeling entertaining to them. These kinds of people will waste hours spreading rumors, creating drama, obsessing over someone else's life, trying to embarrass others publicly, or slowly pulling people down simply because they can. They have spare energy for it, and people mistake lazy people for harmless people all the time. That's the mistake. Because a disciplined enemy asks, "How do I succeed?" But a lazy enemy asks, "How do I stop you from succeeding?" And that difference is small at first glance, but terrifying once you notice it. A disciplined enemy still values something: their reputation, their image, their future success. There are limits to what they are willing to do publicly because shame still restrains them. But a lazy enemy often stopped caring about those things long ago. Their stagnation already trained them to tolerate ugliness in themselves comfortably. So shame no longer controls their behavior properly. That's why they're so exhausting. Not because they're powerful, but because they are willing to sink lower than most normal people would bother sinking. They don't care how irrational they look as long as they get emotional satisfaction from seeing you slowed down. And this is why Napoleon's quote matters so much. Never interrupt your enemy when they are making a mistake. Sometimes confronting someone only gives them purpose. Sometimes exposing them publicly only feeds the exact emotional hunger they already had: attention, reaction, significance. Lazy enemies are often emotionally starving people. Do not become their source of meaning. Never loudly announce that you spotted your enemies. Never emotionally expose your awareness unless absolutely necessary. And most importantly, never create unnecessary enemies out of people who already have nothing grounding them properly in life. Because if a bitter person is wandering around searching for something to destroy, the smartest thing you can do is make sure it isn't you standing closest to them when they collapse. Cruel? Maybe. But you cannot control bitterness in another person. You cannot monitor them forever either. Sometimes the strategic approach is simply distance, silence, and patience. Let people expose themselves naturally. Let them indulge in their own mistakes without your interference. Because sometimes wisdom is not defeating an enemy. Sometimes wisdom is quietly refusing to become their next source of entertainment. Human nature really is strange when you think about it. Some people spend their lives trying to build themselves upwards, while others spend theirs searching for something successful enough to drag back down beside them.